I watched the Arsenal versus Porto final leg, the round of 16. Arsenal's curse has been lifted finally after so many years, after 14 long years. They got knocked out of the round of 16 on seven different occasions. This could have been the eighth. This could have been the eighth. The performance wasn't really suited to a proper feat or a proper victory, which Arsenal fans would be expecting from them. But you know what? Kudos to Arsenal. They won the penalties. They they had chill in their veins when they were taking those penalties. There was absolutely no shadow of a doubt in those players' minds and in those eyes. You could clearly see that every Arsenal player, whilst attempting that penalty, was dead sure of where the ball is going to go. Right? In fact, when the ball literally ricocheted off David Raya's hand and it hit the back of his head, it was almost about to go in, right? But again, kudos to David Raya. He has ensured that he can perform at this level of the competition, right? And I think, sadly, I don't want to say this, but I think it's all over for Ramsdale. You know, Aaron Ramsdale committed a blunder in the first half against Brentford, where Visa literally did a Manesque against the likes of Kepa, right? So Visa did the same to Ramsdale, and Ramsdale got away with it because the second half performance was completely out of bounds. A miraculous recovery from Ramsdale, that shot that Ivan Toney took from a distance. He proved himself that he is the right person to be marshalling that goal line, but still, not enough conviction, not convincing enough. When a manager brings in a new goalkeeper, right, there's a competition between two keepers. Even though the primary keeper has been performing well, there is still going to be a competition, an intense atmosphere between two keepers in the same team. It's not the same thing for a left back. In a game of 90 minutes, you get to see a lot more from other positions than a goalkeeper, right? So it's down to these small, minute moments, which are the most important and crucial ones. And David Raya literally shunned every critic down, right? Literally, people were, even Arsenal fans, there were a couple of Arsenal fans who have been against David Raya. And they've been very vocal about the fact that they want Ramsdale to be representing Arsenal. In fact, even I was quite astounded to see that David Raya was brought into Arsenal this season. Because Ramsdale wasn't as bad as what the blunders that Bernd Leno was committing, right, during his latter stages of his tenure with Arsenal. But nonetheless, this podcast is not really about the keepers; it's about what happened on the pitch. David Raya really stood up, stood his ground, as cold as he could get, attempted two miraculous saves, and the faces, I don't know, the Porto players looked so nervous taking those penalties. They lacked that conviction, that confidence. I don't know what was really going on in their minds. As soon as the left back, I forgot his name, again, he had a pretty good game. Um, you know, as soon as he took the penalty and uh, it got saved by Raya. I don't know what really happened to Porto. I know they were like a goal down, but still, they should have taken the other penalties with a whole lot more conviction, right? Every penalty taker looked nervous in my eyes, and we have seen so many penalties being taken down in the last so many years. But nonetheless, the 90, the 120 minutes of the game was played out in a really different way, right? You wouldn't expect an Arsenal to not be dominating such games at home because Arsenal fans were literally imagining that at home, the Emirates second leg, right, the perfect occasion for Arsenal to be smoking the shit out of Porto. But no, they couldn't smoke Porto at all. And in fact, Porto approached the game with the right tactics, coming up with a shape, ensuring that they wanted to slow down the tempo, the momentum which Arsenal were getting into the game. In fact, they ensured that they were controlling the ball in the first 10 minutes. They didn't even let Arsenal settle down in the first 10, 11 minutes. And then the left center half, he started losing balls. He lost balls on three different occasions. And Arsenal, Odegaard picked those balls up and Saka was there to create the turnovers, and Arsenal started picking up and creating those half chances from there, right? But the game carried on till the 35th, 41st minute. That pass from Odegaard was so exceptional, right? Only a guy like Odegaard or an Ozil could attempt that pass, in my opinion, right? Again, left, uh, people who are left-footed or who write with the left hand or who are primarily left-hand users, right? They are considered lucky. I think Odegaard wasn't lucky, but again, he's got that special trait in him, right? He can actually deliver those passes, which are so subliminal. I think Trossard appearing into the scene and finishing that, pushing the ball in between Pepe's legs. And, even though the 41-year-old performed really well throughout the game, barring this goal, I think Pepe has to be one of the best players for Porto in this game. Nonetheless, we'll move down to the match ratings and see what the game was like, right? So, yeah, as I spoke about the penalties, I think Arsenal converted all the penalties, didn't even need to take the fifth one because Porto had missed their second and their fourth penalty. Wendell missed one, and Wenderson Galeno both played on the left flank. Wendell, the left back, and Galeno, the left winger, right? So now we are moving down to the player ratings. We're going to be talking about the players. So let's just start with Porto. I feel Porto were the underdogs. They were the dark horses. They deserve a little more recognition in this podcast. Um, Costa, I think Costa really had a good game, honestly. I don't know why he's been given a 6.3. But barring the penalties, see, I'm not really going to be talking about the penalties here. I know penalties are something which really put you under the spotlight. He was surrounded by Arsenal fans. He was at that stand where the Arsenal fans were there. So he was under a lot of immense pressure. Not, not denying the fact that a keeper has to deal with that pressure. They have to, for sure. So I'm not denying that doesn't really account for a keeper's talent, his caliber. But again, I'm not going to be so harsh. I'm going to rate him for what really happened on the pitch and not what he did in the penalties. Played for 120 minutes, three saves, three crucial saves for this guy. Right? He conceded one goal, but that was, in my opinion, that was just too perfect a shot for him to save. Right? Um, had really good passing accuracy. I think 65% for a goalkeeper is quite decent, right? It's decent given the fact that the the state of play was so physical. It was so physical, right? It reminded me of the old way of playing a Champions League game, Atletico Madrid being rugged, being physical, and all that stuff. The fact that Porto did not resort to a low block is what really impressed me, right? And I'm really happy throughout the game. Throughout the game, they played man to man. They went man to man and they did not want to give up, right? The intelligent, movements from even Pepe could be visible. Not the younger Pepe, I'm talking about the right center of the 41-year-old Pepe, the OG Pepe, right? His movements was so impeccable, right? He was so immaculate in that position. You could clearly see the way he was even gliding past Kai Havertz in the ending minutes. It's just you just are in awe of such footballers. Anyways, getting back to Diego Costa, 16 out of 41 accurate long balls. Again, I don't really blame him. I think there's also one more thing that you need to, if you compare relatively, if you see Porto's front line, I don't think they're that quality either. Ball retention is horrible, horrible. In fact, in possession, they were horrible, right? Even though they were rugged, they were physical, but still, they were horrible, right? So two punches, two throw-ins, high claims, one, seven recoveries. There was one ball where he literally punched the ball out, but it landed right at Odegaard. And Odegaard took that ball, and it was his reflex to take a shot, and it just hushed past Gabriel Jesus in the ending minutes. So I think that's where Diogo Costa really fucked up. But I think overall, if you see his rating 6.3, I think I would have given him a 6.6, 6.5, for the discipline, the composure that he showed in those moments when Havertz and Odegaard were literally pressing on him. Um, Moving on to Mario, I think again Joao Mario played an exceptional game. At the right back position, I think he was really good against the likes of Trossard because Trossard was literally invisible for the first 35, 37 minutes. And even the likes of Kivya wasn't able to get past him. In fact, Joao Marino drove the ball really well, in certain phases too, completing 18 out of 24 passes, right? He had 43 touches on the ball, dribbled past the opposition once, 100% dribbles, one cross out of 100%. Again, defensively, he was really good. 2 out of 3 tackles, 3 clearances, 2 headed clearances, 7 defensive actions, 5 recoveries. Joao Mario was really good. And if it wasn't for him, I think Arsenal would have had more opportunities, which is why I was also going to say that, maybe if a Martinelli would have starred against the likes of Trossard, the game would have been slightly different. Maybe his numbers and figures would have gone down massively. He won 7 duels, lost 3 duels, 86% success in ground duels, 33% in aerial. So I think 7.2 is the right rating for him, in my opinion. Again, Pepe and Otavio, I'll talk about both together. I think Pepe, the leader of leaders, the leader who was there on the pitch, the 41-year-old, did not really look like a 41-year-old. There was one save that he attempted, that leap which he took. He denied Havertz that aerial control on the ball. Otherwise, that would have gone into. That one leap is what really defines what Pepe can do to a team, right? That confidence, right? And that endurance that he showed throughout the 120 minutes. It's just it's just impossible to hate a player of this sort. When he was 26, 28, and when he was playing for Real Madrid, during that era, we used to hate on him, like, literally, because Liverpool used to struggle against him. Barcelona, like, the Catalonians used to hate him. So there's a lot of history embedded here. But then Pepe has come of age, and we're all really in awe of him, and we still get to see him. 100% duels, ground, aerial duels, couldn't win them. But then there was one clearance which was really, really, really accurate, which I just spoke about. 1 block, 3 clearances. So overall, he had good defensive actions too, 7 in total, and 7 recoveries, right? 6.6. I would give him a rating of 7, to be honest. I think he was decent. Otavio, again, lost 3, a couple of balls, he lost possession, and that's how Arsenal really picked up on whatever momentum and whatever half chances that they had in hand. But overall, I think Otavio was the person that they needed, because he was the guy who was playing the long balls ahead. He was allowing Wendell and Galeno to push ahead on the left flank, and I think for them in the first half, their left flank was more lucrative than their right. Obviously in the second half, the game sort of changed a bit. Conceição and Mario were capitalizing the balls of the right flank, but again, they were not able to thread the passes, right? They were surging ahead. Arsenal, they were let off the hook. Arsenal were literally trying to recover the ball, but then Evan Ellison, again, the number 30, he's a great striker for sure. I'm sure he is in his league, but against the likes of Arsenal, not enough. Not good enough. His hold up was really good, but even when they were lurking around in the first half near the box, they couldn't find that gap to get past the defense. I think that's where Gabriel and Saliba, they did a good job, to be honest. I think Saliba looked a little nervy in moments, but overall, I think the defenders were absolutely immaculate. Even Kivior and Ben White. I think Ben White has had an exceptional game. I think most of their attacks were being facilitated through Ben White. He was that one outlet allowing threading passes to Saka, to Declan Rice, to Havertz, to Odegaard. I think Ben White brings in that intelligence, that positional awareness, and people look up to him in his own team. I think that's where Ben White does really well. Let's just quickly jump onto Ben White as well. I think they've given him a rating of 7.4. Again, 84% accurate passes. Had that one shot on target, I think. That was in the 4th minute, right? That was a header. Barring that, he didn't really have that much attacking impetus, because they had to be slightly more rugged. So I think he was very balanced. And I think Ben White had an exceptional game, did not allow them to attack down his flank at all. I think Kivior as well. There were chances, there were opportunities where he actually was being dragged out of his position because of Conceição's and Mario's pace. They're so pacey. They were so good on the ball. It was impressive. Kivior was being dragged out of those positions in certain sequences. But overall, I think Kivior had a very solid game. And in fact, when he was brought off for Zinchenko, I was like, why was Zinchenko really fumbling in that situation? He had fresh legs, literally brought on in the 101st minute or something of that sort. Yeah, 106th minute. So why was he fumbling? Literally gifted Porto a corner away, and yeah, did not look confident at all. So anyhow, coming back to Porto again, Conceição, I think Conceição, whatever his name is, 21 years old. The pace, man. That this guy's got some legs. Some legs. You know, he reminds me of that guy Bernardo in Brighton, right? And even Jesus Navas, or we can talk about an Mbappe, right? Not an Mbappe, literally, because this guy is too short for his body stature. I think he reminds me of even that guy, Lamptey, right? Tariq Lamptey. Dude, the pace that this guy has, that's his main weapon. He can pull the trigger anytime he wants to. The only thing is, he does have that, he showed that tenacity on the ball too, but then the link up was not there, right? So we can talk about it. And in fact, he had the minimal touches in the game because he was doing most of the rugged work, which I'm sure he's not used to doing. But since they were facing a titan, an English titan like Arsenal, he had to do that hard work too. So yeah, let's just talk a bit about him. I think 26 touches, 67% dribbles, 2 out of 3, 1 out of 2 accurate passes, got dispossessed zero number of times. He never really got dispossessed. This is what I'm talking about. He was so tenacious, right? He was really good. And he had a couple of opportunities. One, he took that left footed free kick, which never really worked out for him. He literally skied that. I think that was in the 64th minute. And the 70th minute, that one opportunity where they were literally let off on a counter. I think he should have converted that too. That shot had a 12% chance of conversion. Could have done something out of that situation too. But overall, I think he's been given a 6.5. I think it's been a bit underwhelming because in the first half he was missing and he was just turning up in sequences on counters, right? So for us to give him a higher rating, I think 6.5 is justified. But Gonzalez and Valera, man, I think Varela and Gonzalez, this joint double pivot, they did a lot of dirty work. They had to dig the ground a lot to, find that right rhythm and balance in the game to prevent anything coming from Arsenal. Even though Arsenal were really quick with Odegaard, Havertz, Saka, and Ben White, trying to leverage the most out of that right flank, I still feel Varela was literally all over the pitch, right? So I would actually give Varela a 6 point. I would give him a 7. And a Gonzalez, I would let him be on 6.5. I wouldn't really want to open these statistics. But I still feel Gonzalez was their engine. There were times when he was actually so solidified in his position, he started carrying the ball when other players were brought off. Right, he started carrying the ball in the latter minutes of the first 90. So I think not a very impactful game, but overall, as he was involved in the unit, he had a good game. To be honest, I think off the ball he was really good. I think Porto's game was better off the ball than on the ball for sure. I think on the ball they were abysmal, to be honest. If we start comparing them to the performances that we expect from Premier League teams, I think they were totally poor on the ball, right? Um, yeah, man. I think Jorginho's been given a rating of 6.5. I don't think Jorginho had that great a game, to be honest, because in the first half, he was literally not involved as much as you would want him to be. In fact, the fact that Porto had the better control in the first half, they were actually bypassing Arsenal's press. So you wouldn't be able to see much of Jorginho in those sequences as well, right? When Arsenal were on the ball, literally they were just using Odegaard, Saka, Ben White, Havertz, right, in that situation. So Jorginho was used as a pivot with Declan Rice trying to be in that number 8 position. But when Jorginho was taken off, Declan Rice started marshalling that number 6 position. And you saw who else was there? Havertz pushed to the back, so he was in that number 8 position. And you saw an Nketiah, Gabriel Jesus come on. Gabriel Jesus looked really flary, really good in that moment. You know, so I think yeah, the only question is Arteta's man management can be questioned here. I don't know about that, but I'm just going to raise two questions to you. Do you think Gabriel Jesus could have been brought on a little earlier for him to actually replace a Trossard or maybe a Saka? Because Saka, I don't think, even though I think he was driving the ball ahead, he was the lone ranger who was increasing the team tilt. He was literally trying to pierce through the defense, but I still think to a certain extent Wendell and Otavio matched his capacity, right? So Saka was not literally pocketed, but in a way, I think they held him to the ground, ensuring that he wasn't scoring those goals, right? Because Saka had a couple of opportunities too. If you see his graph, you know, one if you see the 13th minute, I think that was a left-footed an open play situation, right? It wasn't really good, a 5% chance on that. Then you had a 12% header, right? Which he totally fucked up because the pace on the ball for him was a bit too much. 85th minute left footed shot, regular play, wasn't a lot like he didn't take it with the right, balance, right? The connection with the foot and the ball wasn't really that great. 110-minute, again, a regular open play. He took a shot, it wasn't really convincing enough, and he converted that penalty brilliantly. So I think overall, I think Saka's been given a bit too much rating. I would have given him a 7.2, 7.3, or a 7. I don't think he was that impactful, even though he was increasing the momentum, the confidence of Arsenal, because literally every play, every attacking build up was being was being utilized through Saka. So I feel it would be fair, maybe Footmob feels that 7.7 is a good rating. I think it's a bit of an overrating. I think I would actually give him a 7 or a 7.1. Right. Havertz, for me, literally in some sequences, he was using his physicality a lot, but I thought most of the game, Havertz wasn't really that involved. Right. For me, I think Havertz must have had 49 touches, but for me, I didn't really see much of Havertz, honestly. I don't think so. I think if you want to take a look at his shot taking ability and all that, I think the only shot that he had was in the 122nd minute. So this game was actually played out in a very rugged fashion. So I get it. It was very scrappy, and literally Arsenal just scraped past Porto. Otherwise, I think Porto, being the underdogs, being the lesser favorites, I think Porto deserved some credit, and I am giving a lot of credit to Porto for the way they played this game. So I think if you talk about the 120 minutes, I still feel Arsenal had more chances. But I still feel the performance when you come off the road, literally on the road, and when you're playing in a stadium like Emirates with a crowd roaring out loud, with the Goonies and the Gunners sitting together, it's just a very difficult situation for an away team to perform. Right, in those moments, it's just difficult to show up. But they did show up miraculously, and it's just unlucky that they got oosted out in the penalties. Otherwise, they are a team in the reckoning.